Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping has begun a week-long visit to Latin America with stops scheduled in Ecuador, Peru and Chile. President Xi will attend an APEC leaders meeting, discuss the establishment of an Asia-Pacific free trade area and look to improve bilateral ties with a number of countries. Why is this part of the world of such importance to China? What can we expect to see accomplished on this trip? And how is China working to improve and expand global trade in an increasingly anti-globalization environment? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the studio by Yang Zhimin, Director of the Department for Economy of the Institute of Latin American Studies of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and Rick Dunham, Visiting Scholar at Tsinghua University. But before we begin our discussion, let's look at this.
Chinese President Xi Jinping landed in Quito Thursday afternoon, kicking off a state visit to Ecuador. This is the first state visit by a Chinese head of state to Ecuador in the 36 years since the two countries forged diplomatic relations in 1980. The two presidents are expected to outline the future of bilateral relations and work to further promote the strategic partnership. Despite the long distance, China has become Ecuador's third largest trading partner, with two-way trade reaching $4.1 billion in 2015, quadrupling in just 10 years. Ecuador is now a major destination for Chinese investment and financing in Latin America, now exceeding $10 billion and supporting hundreds of initiatives, including major infrastructure projects such as the Coca-Cola Sinclair hydropower plant, 7 other hydropower plants, and a dozen highways.
Aid from China is very important. The earthquake struck on April 16th, and relief goods from China arrived on chartered flights on the 19th. The tents and medicine to help many victims. There are 2 hospitals being built by Chinese companies in the quake-hit area. They are remarkable, and we would like to extend our gratitude to the Chinese government and people.
Besides Ecuador, the week-long tour will also take President Xi to Peru and Chile. In Peru, he will attend the 24th APEC Economic Leaders meeting in the capital city of Lima. As China's domestic demand expands and Latin America undergoes economic restructuring, the two sides' trade and investment activities are diversifying. Deeper cooperation is desired to enhance free trade in an environment of rising trade protectionism and anti-globalization sentiments.
Welcome back. Obviously, the confidence-building political climate in Ecuador is pretty good with President Xi Jinping's official visit to the country. But I believe Beijing must have missed the APEC blue when we look at how we hosted the APEC summit. So what do you think of the atmosphere and the agenda for President Xi?
Well, first in Ecuador, I think he has a multiple-pronged agenda. And humanitarian is first because China did get a lot of good publicity and goodwill among Ecuadorian people after the earthquake. Secondly is diplomatic, to be there for China, the outreach that China is going to be showing much more in Latin America with the changes going on in the United States. And that leads into the third, which is aggressive trade posture, where with the United States and Europe retrenching, China is reaching out because there's a market, there's growth, especially along the Pacific side of Latin America.
He seems to be suggesting that this is a zero-sum game. You lose and we gain in Latin America, which used to be described as the backyard of the United States. Do you agree?
I don't agree. Because from my viewpoint, I don't think it's the real backyard of the United States, because the Monroe Doctrine has been stopped. It was signed by the Secretary of State of the United States, Kerry, last year. And from my view, I think this area not belong to any country. Is one of the important part in the world. It belongs to the global village. So each country can go there, do business, to establish the relationship with them. So I don't think it's a zero-sum game.
Well, the formidable presence of Chinese investment and perhaps military build-up could be described by Western media as a threat. What about our humanitarian, which went through a devastating earthquake on April the 16th this year? Do you think this is a campaign of soft power or whatever? What do you think of the Chinese proactive diplomacy in this part of the world?
You mean that China offers some aid
we reached out to Ecuador and provided this country with humanitarian relief in the wake of the earthquake.
I think it's very natural. This war, no matter which country occurs some earthquake or other natural disasters, they need the help or aid. So China gives some aid to Ecuador or other countries. I think it's the natural help aid to that country or the help from...
But when China sent our anti-riot cops to Haiti, helping maintain law and order in the wake of their natural disaster, there were some speculations in the United States about meant for the stability and for American policy towards this part of the world. Do you think this, though Secretary Kerry said last year, Monroe Doctrine was over, and but what do you think of the American concerns?
Well, I think that among the Latin American experts in the United States, you probably have some who would express those concerns. I think they're more concerned about President Trump. They're more concerned because they have no idea what's going to be happening in January, and so I think that even they might have some, I would call them minor concerns about China exerting military power in the hemisphere. I think they're more concerned about where President Trump will take the United States and what the place of America will be in the world and what the role of America will be in global trade. I mean, these are much bigger questions to be answered, I think.
One of the major things that President Obama did in the first few days of his presidency that was very impressive was to attend the Summit of Americas, and I was impressed by what he said. He said, "I'm here to listen," with a sense of humility, given the history of the Cold War and the rise of a left-wing Caribbean country, Latin American country. So this time around, what do you think of the sentiment of President Obama after Democrats lost the campaign to a black horse, Donald Trump?
I think this may be the last show of President Obama.
The last show.
Yeah, last show.
In English, it's called the Swan Song.
Yes. Swan Song. Yeah. So maybe he, I think this year, maybe in April or in May, I forgot, he visited two countries, Cuba and Argentina. So these two countries have happened dramatic changes in the recent years. Cuba established or resumed the normalization with the United States, and Argentina have changed its government. The right wing win the election.
Well, it's kind of a regime change, isn't
yes,
it, in Argentina? So
this time, when I think the last chance for him to Latin American as the president.
So what do you think of his legacy? The legacy of the Obama administration's policy towards Latin America. Well, he spoke of domestic political changes, leadership change in Argentina, and normalization of a relationship with Washington after Havana had been isolated for well over half a century.
I would call Latin America one of the successes of the Obama foreign policy. There was a sense of humility. The United States has such a history of military involvement, of overthrowing governments, of being involved in domestic politics. And President Obama reached out toward Cuba, the number one enemy of the United States in the hemisphere for 50 years.
Was that for the sake of visiting the old house of Ernest Hemingway?
Well, that's a nice thing to do. But I think he really wanted to make changes in the world. He didn't succeed in a lot of places, but with Iran and with Cuba, I think those are two that you have to give him credit for. And the rest of Latin America, he did not interfere. I think it showed that what you were saying earlier about zero-sum, it's not necessarily a zero-sum game. China could improve relations in Latin America, so could the United States. The problem is, new president coming in, he could undo everything that happened with Cuba. He could resume the Reagan-style foreign policy in Central America and Latin America if he wanted to.
Latin America has entered into a new era when people could say farewell weapons. By the way, that's the title of one of the novels by Ernest Hemingway. Yes. That's the end of the Cold War. So what do you think of the alleged resource curse for a country like Chile? That will be one of the stopovers for President Xi Jinping. Do you think our economic slowdown, particularly the significant drop in commodity prices, will be a heavy blow to Chile, which is the biggest producer of copper?
I think some Latin American countries, especially in the countries in South America, they suffer a lot after the financial crisis happened in the late of 2008. I think Chile is one of them. But I think this country had tried to diversify its economy. And because Chile is one of the most open and free economy in the world,
it's the first Latin American country to have established
yes,
diplomatic relationship with the PRC, and first to sign FTA, and first to grant world, market economic status to China.
There are so many
first degrees
with China. So I think Chile and other South American countries, they are trying to cooperate with East Asia, especially with China, because Asia Pacific region, I think, is the most dynamic one in the world. So I think they are trying to, on hand,
perhaps we were talking about the wrong country. It should be Peru. Was the first to establish diplomatic relations with the PRC, or is that the Chile? I think it's Peru.
Peru is before Chile.
Chile, right.
Chile is 1971, and Peru in 1970. 1970.
Right. What do you think of the Chinese investment in infrastructure and our trade with these countries in South America?
Well, infrastructure is one of the problems in much of South America, and countries like Ecuador desperately need improved infrastructure. Peru is also like that. Chile is more advanced, but Chile has a diversified economy, so other than infrastructure, there's lots of potential for trade, from agriculture to tourism to heavy industry. But I do think that South America offers an excellent opportunity for China, and the way China goes about trade deals, it gets something in return. So Venezuela, for example, China will get oil whether Venezuela is in an economic crisis or not. They're not going to get IOUs, which is one of the problems that's happened in the past in Brazil and in Argentina. So again, the way China negotiates its deals, it's a win for the countries in South America. They will get the infrastructure, but China will make sure it gets paid back. Historically, that's been one of the financial risks of doing business in South America, and I think it's less of a risk for China because of the way it negotiates the deals.
Infrastructure is, of course, a keyword in the Belt and Road Initiative. I wonder if those countries along the coastline of Caribbean Sea would also want to jump on the wagon and be part of this ambitious blueprint of One Belt, One Road, the maritime Silk Road in particular.
I think so. The One Road, One Belt initiative doesn't include Latin American countries. But with the initiative, we can see that strategy. It welcomes all the countries to join the initiative. So we have
without accusing those countries of enjoying the free riding.
And we have the historic link with Latin America. We have the Lanao de China, or it's the first trade route in the Pacific, China to Philippines to Latin America. So we have a natural link, the old Silk Road, Sea Silk Road in the sea, or Silk Road in the sea. So we have a natural link traditions. So I'm sure that they want to join, to cooperate with, to get more investment, to improve the connectivity.
Why not? We live in a world which depends on co-prosperity and interconnectivity. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Yang Zhimin and Mr. Rick Dunham. We are discussing the agenda of President Xi Jinping's current trip to Latin America, and this trip will take him to 3 countries such as Ecuador, Peru, and Chile. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. Forgive me for my poor memory about which country was the first to establish diplomatic relations with the PRC. Was it Chile or Peru?
Just now, maybe we made a mistake. Chile and Peru are the 2 countries in South America firstly established ties with China. The first actually is Chile, then Peru.
Well, thank you very much for correcting this mistake. But let's look at what would happen on the sidelines of APEC. I'm sorry to say that President Park from ROK will be absent due to the political turmoil that she's facing, and she's being investigated by the police for what we call the 闺蜜 the 闺蜜 means buddy with the girls, ladies. So, what do you think of the impact for ROK?
It's very
Who
difficult.
will be attending?
Well, they will have a lower level delegation, but the government is really in chaos right now in Seoul, and it's very unlikely that the president will survive in power. So there's a vacuum there. I mean, there are 2 important countries that are going to be sort of absent. Korea, but then you have the United States, where President Obama will be there. Everyone will want to know, what does this election mean? I think he will try to reassure them that the world is not going to come to an end, but to be ready for a bumpy ride for 4 years. But he is not there to actually do anything positive. He doesn't have any more power going forward. I am very interested in what will happen with President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Abe.
Right. With the Japanese Prime Minister must be eager to have a dramatic corridor encounter, quote unquote, with President Xi Jinping, to have a quick word with our leader about how to handle issues of South China Sea, in particular the Diaoyu Islands, before political trust can possibly be resumed. But what about the other brilliant woman leader, former president of Brazil, Rousseff? She has been impeached. So noteworthy is the absence of 2 women leaders. One is President Park, the other Rousseff. What's going on there? What's the latest in Brazil at this moment?
Brazil, I think, is the hot topic in this year. I have been interviewed by so many times this year about the issues of Brazil. I think Brazil is now still in very difficult time, because the problem in Brazil can't be resolved through removing one president. It should be a comprehensive reform.
You mean corruption has taken root in the society in many aspects?
It needs time.
I don't care so much about their domestic politics, but what about the negative impact, if any, on Chinese investment in Brazil? Because taking Hambatuta port in Sri Lanka, the ruling party and the opposition party would always use the mega project to criticize each other, charges of bribes or whatever. I mean, we are not sure about what's really going on, but it could be part of the domestic politics when we fall victim to the domestic politics. Don't you think so?
I agree with you. From my view, I don't think it will shaking the confidence of Chinese investors in the country. But you know, if the political is uneven or fell in turmoil, it will affect its investment environment. So, you know, who will go to Brazil, invest, how much they will invest in the country, decided by the investor, not by the government sometimes. So the investor will calculate their loss and profits.
Diligence report,
Yeah.
of course, means you have to assess the risks of the investment environment, and political turmoil will, of course, deter and dissuade investors from going there. What about Venezuela, where President Maduro is facing very strong demonstrations from a parliament that is dominated by a hostile political force?
Yes. This year, I think there are so many changes in Latin America, such as the left wing lost some power and the right wing
is making a political comeback.
Yes. So that means this region have experienced the big changes since the beginning of the new century. But I think you have noticed that the minister of the Foreign Affairs of China,
Mr. Wang Yi,
made 3 changes of China's position on the region. The 3 changes that our view on the development of the region, our relationship with the region. So I'm also agreed with that. Although something happened in this region, but this region is a promising region compared to other parts in the world. So I think after some change, maybe some change is very natural. Something should be decided by the people in this region. Who will be elected by them and who will take power. I think it's very nice.
An American observer, Rick Dunham, do you think China's proactive effort to sign free trade deals with Latin American countries will make a major difference to this region, given the 3 changes? No changes to Wang Yi on behalf of the Chinese government, but what about the political upheavals in some of the countries like Brazil, Venezuela? Will they deliver serious, if not devastating, impact to China's investment there?
It's going to complicate matters. I mean, China is right economically, it's right diplomatically to press forward. Venezuela and Brazil both have political tumult right now. They both have instability, but below that, there's the economic issue. In Brazil, there's deep problem with the economy. I mean, they never really recovered from the financial collapse 2007, 2008. In Venezuela, it's largely tied to oil. And if oil prices stabilize and rise, some of the problems in Venezuela will abate. They won't solve the problems. Each country has different issues, but China as a government will want to expand trade. I mean, that's a winning policy. In terms of Chinese investment, that's another question, and the companies that would move in have to assess the risk. And that is more than just the economics. It is the political instability that you have to factor in everywhere, including Chinese investment in the United States, not knowing what will happen.
Do you think our increase in investment in many parts of the world will serve as a counterbalance against the anti-globalization trend? The most famous, most well-known impact of such anti-globalization move would be the campaign success of Donald Trump, who rejects not only TPP but also the idea of NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Agreement. Do you think China is fighting an uphill battle? What's the chance for China to seize this opportunity and make inroads into some of the areas where China's investment in the infrastructure, for example, will be a huge opportunity for the host countries?
I think China is the strong supporter and builder of the open economy and try to open a free trade system in the world. Judging from some very important policies, strategies such as One Belt, One Road initiatives, I think it's what China wants to do to campaign with the anti-globalization. The Brexit or the word from the Brexit in the United States, Maxit, that means withdraw from the NAFTA. I think it's the same. The anti-globalization will make some country lose more. Because China, it is that China is one of the most beneficial from the globalization. So I think what China has got from the globalization, China will remember it. So that China will try to keep this system to make an open and free trade system to benefit the countries.
Despite enormous efforts to mend this, the flawed post-Second World War economic order, such as IMF and the World Bank, to promote the voting powers of emerging markets. And we've got it. If you look at listing RMB as one of the major reserve currencies in the special drawing rights basket of IMF. Having said this, one important hallmark of globalization, Rick, is a free movement of human resources, along with capitals, products, and ideas in the age of globalization. Following the campaign success of Donald Trump, I'm afraid most ethnic Chinese in America, in the United States, felt worried about the growing xenophobic sentiment of pro-Donald Trump supporters. So what do you think of the plight of the Chinese Americans there?
Well, there's anxiety among almost anyone who is a minority, and that is that's a wide range. That's national origin, that's ethnicity, that's religion. I mean, there are Jewish reporters who are having packages sent to their homes threatening them from some of the neo-Nazi supporters of Donald Trump. You have one of Donald Trump's advisors saying that they should go ahead with a registry to force all Muslims to register. If you have these things happening, it's natural for people to worry. There was a tweet sent out by quoting Steve Bannon, who is the COO of Trump's campaign and will be his chief advisor in the White House, saying there are too many Asian CEOs, he said both South Asian and Asian, which means Indian, Pakistani, and Chinese and Japanese. Yes, there's reason to worry about this kind of hostility, but there's not really much you can do except continue and hope that the majority of Americans will be against this kind of anti-foreign and it's not really anti-American, because America is a nation of nations. The sentiment is anti-American.
What's amazing, gentlemen, is some scholars have done an estimation. And the statistics show that only 70% of the campaign pledges by all American presidential hopefuls, particularly the victors, were made public. So this is what I have to say at the end of this very interesting discussion here. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.